Hey guys, hope you're doing really well. Jake here from SSL. The purpose of today's video, we're going to be looking at a multi-track session focusing on a selection of two plugins. First and foremost, we have our SSL Guitarstrip. We're going to be also combining that with Harrison Audio's Bassflow plugin as well. Now for the project session that we have, we're going to be using a track called Down to the River by Andy Zuckerman. This is your classic kind of rock band rhythm section, so drums, bass, and guitars, also your vocal chain. And the purpose is really kind of honing in on the tone of both the bass and also the guitar stems that we have available. So before we get into that, let's look into a bit of an overview of the plugin. So let's start with SSL Guitarstrip. I'll load up a copy right here. So those of you who've already played around might very well know that this is very much a modular plugin that we can use. But just to go over this again, we have our basic bypass function in and out. We have our input and output metering. We can also control the input and output via these gain knobs right there. To the top left, we have our phase correction. We also have sidechain listening. This is a great tool to use if you're using multiple instances of, let's say, guitar stems, and you want to avoid any sort of kind of phase cancellation as well. To our right, we have our EQ. Now, this is a simplified version with a few bands, but it's a great chance to kind of dial in that tone from your recordings. The bottom left, we've got our compressor. Again, another simplified rendition of our compressor looking into thresholds. We've got a selection of different kind of attacks, auto gain, and also our mix knob. And finally, and one of my favorite parts of this plugin is the modeling section. So on the drop down, we are functioning between both a guitar amp and a bass amp. So this is a great example to use for any sort of DI recordings that you're using, or in this case, we're going to be blending it with some of our guitar tones to add a bit of a boost and also a bit of a drive to our tone. Next, we're going to be looking at Harrison Audio's Bassflow. So I'll load up a version of this. Now again, following very similar, we're looking at kind of a modular plugin with a couple of different features we can look at. So at the top left, we're looking at the spectral bass compressor. This functions similar to your conventional compressor with the threshold, the knee, the release, and also the makeup gain. But it has a couple of frequency-dependent bands, so we can start using this as a multi-band functionality. To our right, we've got our bass character. So this is an EQ, but it's actually basing it on the first fundamental frequency and the following harmonics. So you can actually use this to give it a bit more drive, a bit more saturation in your tone as well. Next to that, we won't be using this much, but the chorus effect is a great modular effect you can use to dial in your tones. Lastly, we have our EQ, so 5-band equalizer with an array of different selections from high pass, shelves, and also notches. We've got our RTA spectrum graph, so we can actually see the frequencies that we're working with. And lastly, we have the master controls. So this is a great way to chain your processing, and I'll dial into that a bit later. So for the bass track, we're going to be using Harrison Audio's AVA Bassflow. And what we're going to do is we're going to do exactly like before. We'll listen to things in context and out. So let's have a listen to just the bass by itself. And I'll open an example of the Bassflow as well. Let's hear it with the plugin engaged. Awesome, so we've got some differences here. So already with the processing, we're adding in some of that low end thump that we all love in the bass, roughly between kind of 80 to 100 Hertz. Obviously I've added some high pass filtering just to tame those low end frequencies. can see in the equalizer here, we've got our kind of mid band hitting around 750 Hertz at a boost, just to bring some of that honk in the bass. And I've used a high shelf. I won't really be hearing much of the frequency on this, but it's just giving a bit of breath and a bit of air to the strings. Next in my chain through the master controls, we're going to the bass character. The bass character in this sense is really emphasizing the EQ I've set already. So we're targeting the first fundamental frequency, again, some of that kind of low end 100 Hertz. And then we're adding the first harmonic, which is again, just giving a bit of drive, a bit of saturation. Lastly, we've got our bass compressor as well. So what this is doing is really kind of taming some of those peaks of the transients, but hopefully also blending it when we add the context of the rest of the band, i.e. the drums and the guitars. So let's hear it with the drum section. Bypass. Awesome. So already starting to set quite well in the mix, even that it's a bass DI. So next, we'll go into the guitar channels that we've got. Now again, we'll listen to these in and out of context. I will move these into mono just so we hear them directly, and I'll put those back into pan. So we have the guitar left and right channel. Let's start with left. Again, both are going into our guitar sum. Let's load up the instance of the plugin. Hear that in bypass mode. And obviously now with the plugin engaged. Now both guitars are recorded very well. Now I wanted to add one of the channels a bit more kind of low end. So I've added for the EQ a few dB around kind of the low band frequency, gave it a bit of brightness and shimmer around 4K, and then just a touch around the top to give that breath as well. Next, I have that going into the compressor. The compressor has, again, a selection of modes that we can go. I wanted to add a slightly faster attack with the auto gain makeup as well. Again, just slightly tames those transients, but again, brings a bit of life and electricity out of the guitar. So accompanying the left, we'll look at the right guitar channel. Again, adding an instance of Guitarstrip. I have it in bypass and I'll engage the plugin accordingly. Awesome. So the purpose of this instance is making it a little darker compared to its left, which is a bit brighter. And the first thing I ran is the guitar modeling section. Again, you have a combination of using either guitar or the bass profile. You have the preamp drive and a couple of functions you might find on your typical amp settings or guitar pedals. Now, 100% wet on this actually really dumbs the channel down a bit, and it makes it a bit too dark and a bit too gritty. So what I'm going to do is play it from 100% and dial it correctly to, well, my ears hear it best. And bypass the plugin. Just add a bit more drive to that. So now that we have the guitar tone set, let's just widen our stereo width right now, and let's hear the guitars in context. awesome. So it's really bringing a lot of life, a lot of energy. In a mix like this, I try to incorporate that kind of live element, and it definitely is starting to sound like that. So now that we've got our guitar rhythm section and the bass with the AVA plugin as well from Harrison, let's finally look into the guitar solo. So again, we'll listen to this in out of context, should I say. This is one of your typical kind of face-melting guitar solos, and I just wanted to add a bit more punch and drive in the mix. So if I find the section, here we go. Really overdriven, sounding awesome. Now let's add this plugin. So again, I haven't taken too much of the organic recording out of the mix. I wanted to add some subtle processing, and in this case, I'm just using a touch of the EQ and compressing just to kind of glue the mix a little bit. So let's hear this bypass, and I'll engage the plugin once again. So again, this instance uses a bit of a boost. I've obviously level matched this. I don't want anything to be necessarily louder. I want to hear the tonality of the guitar. Last but not least, let's hear the guitar solo in the context of Rhythm of the Band. Awesome. And there's your rock band that you've got right there. Hey guys, thanks so much for taking the time to watch this content. My name is Jake from SSL. Thanks again, and all the best. We'll see you soon.